I think on 28 points in the Swiss standings, so a few wins here could take them all the way through towards that top 8.
Yeah, I've got a lot of time for both of these players. Luke, I've known for a very long time, a very well-established player in this home country of the UK.
An innovative player as well.
Yeah, exactly, especially from some of those finishes he's had in recent times. That top 4, which he just fell short, because I think he was looking at that top 8 and thinking, well, if I just get past this top 4 game, I had a good matchup in the finals.
Oh yeah, the Palkia deck just couldn't quite deal with Charizard over at Gdansk, but the fact that it was a exclusive deck to just him showed exactly how much of an innovator he is, and he is the player bringing an interesting deck here. But on the other side, Rahul Reddy coming in, and one of those players traveling internationally across the season.
Yeah, playing a deck very similar to what we've already seen on stream here, as we do get a chance to glimpse at those prizes. There's that view of that Burnett in the top left of those prizes for Rahul there. That opportunity to use Puppet Offering and being able to select a support card from your discard pile and put this Pokemon, anything underneath it, into the lost zone. So another way to very quickly ramp up. Luke is playing a very innovative deck that I've spoken to him a little bit before about, and across our friendship group. He's very much, again, a turbo moon deck.
Yeah, he loves to have a deck that can take knockouts quickly. He's always been a fan of being able to get a first turn knockout. Even with that Palkia deck back in the day, he put the Suicune in there specifically to be able to take a first turn knockout, so likes to have the tempo. We'll be looking to do that here, and it'll be a question now whether something stable like a Lost Engine will be able to deal with the aggression of the Roaring Moon EX as they kick off Swiss round 13, and it will be Rahul to start us off.
Starting with that Mana being the active spot here, probably not the most ideal starter, but Luke will be, like I said, licking his lips because he is going second, does play those sort of 4 copies of Dark Patch, plays, of course, the Professor Silence Vitality to power up those Roaring Moons, plays Squawkabilly EX, which is not something we've seen too often recently, just because of the turbo decks kind of taking a bit of a backseat in recent, well, I guess with this post-rotation.
I think a lot of people looked at the new deck of Iron Hands with Iron Crown and thought, well, that's the best turbo deck in the format. But Luke preferring the ancient Pokemon for that turbo, as the future is not quite the same in the way it works. And I think the new Roaring Moon has shown exactly what is possible. We saw it in the last matchup. The ancient box has had a resurgence from the early tournament results. A lot of people writing it off, and it's shown at EUIC that it can stand. And so I think that's where the ancient archetypes, I think, have a lot more research to be done into them to find that optimal list.
Yeah, for sure. And we've seen sort of 3 different variants of kind of ancient box decks, right? Luke's, as we sort of mentioned, is playing very sort of straightforward Roaring Moon EX, Roaring Moon sort of turbo type ancient box deck, utilizing all of those great synergy cards from the ancient sort of releases of the last couple of sets. Rahul here has taken that unique take on Lost Zone Giratina V-Star deck with the additions of that Burnett as well, as we do see the first flower selecting of round 13.
Giratina V or Giratina V, I think it was.
Yeah, it looks like an easier choice. And a pass over here, Luke, can you start capitalizing on just that one Comfey in the active spot? Has
wow.
access to loads of cards that are playable.
Squawkabilly there as well, so lots to be drawn here, and the Professor Siler's Vitality.
Yeah.
So this turn could really be disruptive. There was the Prime Catcher in there, such a great addition to those turbo decks.
Yeah, like I said, I've spent a bit of time talking to Luke about this deck as well as a good friend of ours, and sort of in that kind of group that he was testing this, trying to convince people that there's a lot of legs to this deck. There's something about it. If you're able to just take prizes, play 3 good games very quickly as a turbo deck as well, start swinging away, apply so much pressure to a format which I've kind of mentioned a couple of times, feels like it's slowed down a little bit because there's a lot more sort of setup decks and things are given additional time to just prepare their board state before they start swinging away for big damage and big prizes.
Yeah, often these turbo decks can fizzle out with the amount of disruption in the format with Roxanne, Iono, and things like Eerie as well coming into fruition. But early on, there is no doubt that these decks can really cause a stir. As we see the draw, oh my goodness, some great cards.
What a set of 3 cards from that Professor Siler's Vitality there. Greninja, Radiant Greninja, we've seen so often, and we'll see it very likely on Rahul's side if there's an opportunity as well. Earthen Vessel pitching away that Nest Ball just to get energies to continue drawing through the deck. does mean Luke has an attack on board if he's able to switch out that active Roaring Moon, because the attachments so far have been a Dark Patch and a Professor Sada's Vitality.
Yeah, and the ideal scenario here would be to get the Calamity Storm to hit for 220 into the Giratina V if a Stadium were to come down, but currently no Stadium in play, so the Frenzy Gouging might be required for a knockout onto the Giratina V, which wouldn't be ideal, but it is still a backup option, so now going to be looking to dig for that Stadium.
Does have, is it Prime Catcher in hand?
Yeah, Prime Catcher's
so
there, ready to
guaranteed.
go. Oh my goodness, look at this aggression straight away from Luke, and has the Squawkabilly still to draw even more.
Just to keep going, this is it. This is how the deck runs, and Luke, this is why you're 9-2-1, my friend.
Any stadiums?
2 more.
Oh, no Stadium off the draw.
Does look like it has to be a Frenzy Gouging here. Not ideal. A lot of Pokemon in that hand with Ball Search as well. But, yeah, kind of really difficult scenario here. If he does use Frenzy Gouging, deals 200 damage to himself, and then just puts him in easy range of something like a Cramorant.
Maybe a few more draws with the restart if the right cards can be put down. I think there was some discard available, but I don't know if that's ideal. Just got to work out what the correct option is. But obviously discarding those ancient Pokemon will just increase the damage output of the small Roaring Moon, the one prize Roaring Moon.
The Littlin, as it were. But here we go. Just kind of working out the best plays here for himself.
Maybe not needing to reach too far here and just accepting that the Frenzy Gouging will be enough. You know, only 1 in the loss zone for Rahul already.
It's a lot of resources that you'd have to pitch away if he does decide to utilize restart. I think maybe just getting the restart, even just as a fail-safe going forward, is a great way of dealing with what Rahul may do to his own board state, because he does play that Roxanne as well.
Ooh, does look like the attempt here will be to go all the way down for that restart. I mean, a Stadium here would be incredible, and with things like trekking shoes, I know Luke is a big fan of trekking shoes.
Yes, indeed. We tried to convince him to maybe take one of those trekking shoes out, and it hurt him when we said that to him.
Yeah, I think every deck Luke builds starts with 4 trekking shoes, and then we'll build the deck around it.
Dark Patch, no Pokestop. That's the 4 copies of the Stadium he does play. Does get a chance to just kind of rebuild the board with items like the Dark Patch as well. Has Ultra Ball in hand for a future turn, but looks like it's gonna have to be a Frenzy Gouging for a knockout. Knock you out to your opponent's active Pokemon. If your opponent's active Pokemon's knockout in this way, this deals 200 damage to itself. Or maybe just choosing Calamity Storm here, keeping it for a future turn.
Yeah, just rather stabilize and not have to take the knockout. I mean, if it evolves now into the Giratina V-Star, wouldn't need to use the Frenzy Gouging, so that could be useful. And as the game progresses, that the single prize Roaring Moon will get more and more powerful, so could just end up going down to single prize towards the end, but has put so many 2 prizes in play. It's not looking ideal in that sense, but still, great first turn with how much has been set up there. You can see the board has just got 2 attackers ready to go. You've got the Mew EX in play and that Radiant Greninja to help you draw more.
Luke's seen the Giratina V hit the loss zone as well, so Rahul's not exactly going to have too many of those hanging around when one is stuck in the loss zone there and one already fairly heavily damaged.
You can just see the tempo of Luke's deck is really putting the pressure on Rahul to get set up quickly, start putting things in play, and almost like making mistakes more likely because you feel like you have to get multiple Giratina in play because they can get knocked out on that first turn. You're thinking about, oh, I can't discard that because I might need that to help set up, because at the moment I'm a bit behind. So just forcing those tougher decisions for Rahul.
Luke will have to be a bit wary of cards like the Iron Leaves EX coming into play as well. Another way of taking a big knockout on those Roaring Moons. Fortunately for Rahul, that Roaring Moon is weak to grass types. So hitting it as collateral as part of the typically used for Charizard EX, but collateral means that it also takes down a Roaring Moon EX as well.
We saw that in the last match, that a card that was teched in to increase damage output to dark types was very effective at taking the knockout the Roaring Moon EX, so it does get hit in the crossfire a little bit. But that Forest Seal Stone, a definite question mark, because it was originally put straight into the loss zone earlier on, and then Rahul backtracked on that and thought, actually, I need that. I need to set up a little bit more here. And so I might actually need that Forest Seal Stone just to get through my deck quicker and get the things I need at the right moment.
Prime Catcher just bringing up The Radiant Greninja here as well. Does have energy in hand, if I recall correctly, from Luke. But of course, only has right now concealed cards and the Ultra Ball maybe to pitch down a bit further if it needs to go that way. Especially when you can try and utilize things like Restart. Rahul finds that other Giratina V, which is so vital in this matchup here, because it is your big attacker. Being able to attack with ease compared to some of your more little Pokemon, or maybe even that Banette EX that he plays. Mike, tell us about that.
I mean, the Banette EX, a way to stop those decks that rely on rare candies, superior energy retrievals, all those important item cards, as the Banette EX has a very familiar attack effect. The Everlasting Darkness, during opponent's next turn, they can't play any item cards from their hand.
Pokestock, sorry, just had to cut you off there. He did find it on that turn. Grabs 2 Ball Search, apologies. There was just an opportunity there, but Luke unfortunately grabbing it 1 turn too late.
Yeah, I mean, still in a commanding position, and the big thing in this matchup now is both Prime Catchers have been used. A vital ace spec in so many decks now. If you use them up early, it can often put you in a rough position where you don't have access to one of those big power spike turns of combining a Prime Catcher with something like an Iono. And so the fact that both players have used up that resource, it takes away the main gust out both these players will be looking to utilize at any given moment.
Yeah, I'm sure with Luke's scenario here, he's going to want to start trying to just get Pokemon ready to start swinging. He needs to start attacking and taking prizes. Remember, it is very much a turbo build. It's that Professor Sada's Vitality and that one-off Iono as well. Trekking Shoes, deciding to keep the Pokestop. No, pitches it away. Power Pad.
Hoping for that boss's orders, I reckon, there.
Yeah, already having utilized that Prime Catcher. Just eyeing up, putting back some of those useful resources back into the deck. Just 2 copies of boss's orders in Luke's deck, of course, but wants to always target the Pokemon he would like to attack, as he does use Professor Sada's Vitality. Some additional items there. This is how great that Pokestop is in this deck.
You see, just trying to set up as much as possible with the Dark Patch, with the energy attachments from the Professor Sada's Vitality. You know, this deck can be disrupted if there's nothing on the board to attack with, but once you've got attackers down, you can just keep chaining those in theory. So at this stage has now multiple Roaring Moon ready to go.
Sending up the little non-EX Roaring Moon as an attacker there, just to take out the easy KO on the Comfey. Vengeance Fletching taking the first prize of this Swiss Round 13 here at the Pokemon European International Championships.
Yeah, one of the benefits Luke tends to have with his interesting decks is he knows how the matchup's going to go, whereas opponents might not be as familiar. The only difference here is we all played against Roaring Moon EX last format, and this deck doesn't change too much, just has a slightly different single prize attacker in the Roaring Moon that's just come out in Temporal Forces. And now for Rahul, he's got to try and navigate this matchup with familiarity over how the deck works, but not necessarily practiced it with this particular deck.
Yeah, Rahul's just... We've kind of mentioned Banette EX a couple of times. It's another one of those psychic types that is weak to dark Pokemon, so very susceptible to something like that single prize Roaring Moon.
Don't think we'll be seeing that one come out in this matchup.
Maybe just to utilize the other Banettes that we've kind of already seen in the prizes. Of course, Rahul won't be having access to that anytime soon for the time being. But a very useful utility card to ramp up the Lost Zone counters. But we'll have to rely on those Giratina V and perhaps that Iron Leaves EX. Fantastic card we've seen splashed in decks that have Grass Energy, especially ones that can accelerate Grass Energies onto the board. Iron Leaves with that Rapid Vernier ability, an ability we've seen before in things like Weird Ear V, or very similar. When you play this Pokemon from your hand, you can promote it to the active position and move any energy from your other Pokemon to this Pokemon, therefore very quickly powering up.
Yeah, we'll see whether that becomes a viable option at some point in this matchup.
I think it might be in hand as well as an option, but maybe not for the time being. We'll just need to...
Yeah, you want to make sure you're knocking out a 2-prizer with it. You don't want to give away a 2-prizer for a 1-prizer.
For sure, for sure.
But then also, if you look at those prize cards for Luke, taking 1 prize, a 2-prize knockout would put the Roxanne into range. And Roxanne, a great way to disrupt. Just the 1 in Rahul's list.
guess it's one of those things, and one of the reasons why, you know, Luke prioritizes that Mew EX in his list, as we do see the Lost Zone now just reactivated with all those Mirage Gates, applying energy to the board state. Cramorant in the active. Forest Sealstone utilized on that Giratina V, giving that extra options for that deck, rather than necessarily utilizing Star Requiem.
Yeah, I think it's a great addition to Giratina, where it may have been known for being slightly inconsistent in the past, but it got away with that because it had great comeback potential with the Path to the Peak. Now players looking to try and utilize Forest Sealstone in those matchups where you don't necessarily need the Star Requiem.
Oh, big attack. There's the Iron Leaves EX activated with Rapid Vernier into the active spot. Counter catcher taken from the Forest Sealstone, targets down that big Roaring Moon EX on the bench with the 3 energies. And this is a massive 180 damage from that Prism Edge attack. But can't attack next turn, but it's likely going to be tried to be retaliate, knocked out. But with the grass weakness, it's a big KO.
Yeah, again, we mentioned this is in every Giratina list we've seen so far, and it's there for the Charizard EX matchup. And unfortunately for Luke, picking a deck that has that dark type is getting hit in the crossfire, where Charizard EX has been targeted with this Iron Leaves tech card. But Rahul trying now to get those energy, get the energy onto the active and use those knockouts. But if you start using Giratina throughout, the energy will go to the Lost Zone. But by using the Iron Leaves, you're keeping energy in play, so it makes it so you've got a little bit more longevity in your deck when having to take out multiple knockouts, as they will go to the discard pile and they can be retained through Super Rod. So a lot of reasons why that Iron Leaves knockout now could be so vital to the end game for Rahul.
Yeah, so you see Luke's kind of rebuilding up his Roaring Moon EX there, of course, with that fantastic second attack Calamity Storm with a Stadium in play that is discarded, will be able to take the return knockout 220. But Rahul here does have an easy route to sort of taking the 6 prizes. You still have that Roaring Moon hidden under that hand, and also that Squawk ability as well. And that would be the final 4 prizes that Rahul would like to take, really, here.
Or even the Mew EX in the active. So plenty of options for knockouts. So Rahul going to be going for a 2-2-2 approach. And quite a lot to ask of Luke now. Still going to have to take 3 knockouts himself.
Yeah, as we do see the free retreat of the Mew EX into the Calamity Storm attack of that Roaring Moon EX, an instant return knockout, removing the Iron Leaves into the discard pile here. And it's on Rahul to try and retaliate back.
Well, we'll be using the Chorus Experiment, so no Roxanne usable here. That's fine. You know, you've still got a little bit more time to play with. Can use that maybe later on. And you can just see just rebuilding back up, trying to set up some of these Giratinas. The Burnett EX, a nice easy decision alongside the Shuppet.
Yep, see you later 1-1 line.
Or, I mean, as Azul called it, 5 dead cards in the list.
Oh, in certain matchups, but
yes.
Yeah, in this one, probably not as needed as you'd expect. But yeah, I think just piggying back off what you mentioned earlier, it was great insight in just saying that the Iron Leaves means the energies stay within play rather than utilizing Lost Impact to send all the energies to the Lost Zone. So can just reuse things like the Super Rods to bring them back so that they can be Mirage gated back out of the deck again, as there's another easy choice from the Flower selecting. The V-Star picked up off of that Flower selecting there, switch into a second Comfey. Jet Energy pitched away, well, double Jet Energy, I think that last one was.
Yeah, and now at this stage, after using the Forest Sealstone, Star Requiem is not an attack that can be used, and so we'll just have to use the Cramorant here.
So kind of giving Luke an opportunity here to, both players effectively are 2 attacks away from winning this game. Right, so Luke will be looking, he has boss in hand, maybe double boss in hand already. There's another Pokestop, so that's ramping up the damage of Calamity Storm. I'm sure Luke will want to try and power up another attacker. There's a Poké Gear, Trekking Shoes, and a Nest Ball. 3 big pickups, I think.
I mean, that Cramorant attack could be huge because it means the Frenzy Gouging is no longer an option. But thankfully, that damage early on onto the Giratina V did put it in range of the 220 damage attack from Roaring Moon. We've spoken about how important that first turn could have been with the Pokestop, but Very smart from Luke to set it up. Calamity Storm for 100 earlier on, and now Calamity Storm for 220 with the Pokestop in play.
There are not many resources left, however. That's the one trouble. We just had a little quick look through the nest ball as Luke takes 2 prizes, but 1 boss with the Roaring Moon already set up on the bench. Rahul has to disrupt him this turn. Not that he's going to know that there's a boss in Luke's hand, of course, but...
I mean, you want to disrupt no matter what. When you see someone on 1 prize card remaining with a Roaring Moon ready to attack on the bench, I mean, is the Giratina V-Star in range of that Roaring Moon on the bench? That is a big question, because there's not as many Ancient cards in Luke's list as there would be. But yeah, Chorus Experiment used, and the Roxanne found off of it.
Yeah, this might be that little bit unfortunate with Luke having set up that Roaring Moon on the bench, and if it's able to just use that boss's orders, there's no other way to just gust something up. And I think Rahul's seen it now. Luke Kirkham takes game 1 of this, I'm sure, with that final prize remaining. Rahul unable to disrupt Luke's hand, and Luke will be taking game 1 of this Swiss round 13. Incredible display from a turbo deck, but slowed it down enough initially to keep that Giratina V in range for future turns.
I mean, we said it was a turbo deck, but unlike a lot of other turbo decks we see, the disruption was the key. It wasn't so much about getting the early knockout that completely dismantled the board of Rahul from Luke. It was about that mid-game INO that slowed down Rahul and made it difficult for him to set up multiple attackers. Rahul showed exactly what the comeback potential is of his deck, especially having that Iron Leaves to be able to get an instant knockout on any Dark-type attacker on the board. But Luke showed that the early stabilization of the board, the early aggression was enough. Let's have a look at some of those great moments throughout the game.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things was trying to get that Roaring Moon EX into the active spot. Did take the early prize with that baby Roaring Moon, we call it as well, that single prizer. Iron Leaves came down, of course, just to kind of swing away at one of those big EX Pokemon, but it's susceptible to a return KO, and that's what Luke was able to then chain going forward.
And that early 100 damage on the Giratina V-Star was so important. We saw how powerful that Pokestop is with Luke's deck. So many item cards available and able to take it off the board out of the opponent's use. And now we see the prize cards. Maybe those Mirage Gates could be a problem early on. Maybe a few cards here that would be nice for consistency, but nothing too worrying in those prize cards.
Yeah, Luke's going to be sort of expected of that. Like I said, a lot of his list is very much 4 copies of a lot of cards. Does start that Squawk Ability EX, so can continue sort of bursting through, at least turn 1 for the time being. Probably not the most ideal starter, depending on what the rest of the hand was. Rahul was prizing sort of what looks like sort of double copies of multiple cards, double switch, double Mirage Gate, and a 1/1 line of Giratina V-Star.
Well, is there a way to discard these energy to utilize that Dark Patch? There is, and Dark Patch is such a powerful card in the format right now, as it allows you to get energy into play without requiring a supporter. You know, Professor Cider's Vitality is a great way of accelerating. You've obviously got a lot of things like Mirage Gate that are equally as powerful, but they require so much more to get going. And we can see here, Luke, on his first turn, able to get Dark Energy into the discard pile and put them into play straight away with that Dark Patch.
Yeah, such a great combo, synergy of cards. Now, that Power Pad, was there anything discarded? I think from a supporter's perspective, I'm not too sure there was, which is a bit of a shame, not getting much value out of that, as we do see that Squawk Ability EX there, ability activated. Squawk and Seize being able to pitch a whole hand into the discard pile and draw a fresh new set of 6.
And another Dark Patch. That energy in the discard pile might be utilized later by Professor Cider's Vitality, so might not want to get it straight away. But the Greninja, getting that set up is key as well. We've mentioned it so many times today and yesterday. Radiant Greninja, the fact it appears in decks without any water energy and just shows you that alone is why it's such a powerful card. Discarding energy is a big part of a lot of decks, especially those ancient decks, but it's also just so consistent for the Lost Engine, as we saw there. The first thing for Rahul was to discard an energy and get a flower selecting going.
Yeah, and Jet Energy to get the Comfey, start pivoting across and start getting cards into the Lost Zone. Has another Comfey in hand already. Buddy Buddy Poffin will help to pull out further Comfeys out of the deck as well, just to kind of help thin the deck a little bit more, gives him the chance to double check the prizes. You know, a couple of those switch. A lot of these Giratinas go down to sort of 4 switch cards effects now, but has access to things like that Jet Energy, which allows him to also utilize some of those flower selects at the same time. So just double checking what he has access to. One of these key things a lot of players do now is to take notes, so that it helps you with your resource management going forward.
Yeah, well, the challenge now, we mentioned it before for Rahul, is he's staring down a board that can very quickly and very aggressively take knockouts. So you're concerned at what the potential is for Luke, and consequently you feel like you have to almost rush your setup a bit more, go a bit faster. You can't use the Abyss Seeking of Giratina as comfortably because it might just get knocked out straight away. And if you do, you have to set up 2 Giratina, which isn't as easy now as Buddy Buddy Poffin is the main way of searching out those Comfey early on. So you're just asking a lot more questions of a slower build-up deck with the aggression of that Roaring Moon.
Yeah, 100%. I think you've called it perfectly there, as we do see the boss's orders. Lost Zone, because the other card was this card that's just been played, Chorus's Experiment. Looks like he's going to go chaining those as well, which is fantastic to see. Temple of Sinnoh as a easy option, because some of those other cards there are some of the limited amounts due to the prizes that are available.
Yeah, maybe had Luke put the Pokestop in play last turn, that Temple of Sinnoh would have been key to bump it, but ultimately you don't want to be putting stadiums in play as Rahul, because that does help out with the damage output of the Roaring Moon.
If the Mirage Gate is lost zoned here, it does mean we would only have access to 1 in the deck without taking any prizes. Giratina V now benched as well, having to put it down just as a single one, but just has to try and find a way to maybe prevent that being knocked out. As we do just pass over to Luke here. Pokestop down.
We're just going to go straight in with the Pokestop. Any important resources gone? Oh, 2 trekking shoes. A little bit of dig available with those.
New EX could have been an option. Oh, Dark Patch, easy hold there. Second trekking shoes, another Roaring Moon EX, sees another card. Iron Bundle, Hyper Blower.
You'll have an Iron Bundle.
Oh, any opportunity, please. more, I say.
The only problem there was discarding that Mew EX. Could have been a way to find a few extra draws here in this turn, but needs a way to get energy. And that Professor Sada's Vitality off of a Poker Gear might be the only way to draw into more energy, but you know, ideally wanting to get more discarded at this stage.
Yeah, so no access to anything like a Super Rod, because typically that's why he plays 4 Roaring Moon EX, 3 Roaring Moons in this list, because he's just going to hit them anyway.
Got an Iron O, but wants the Professor Sada's Vitality, I would assume.
He might have hit 1 there.
Yeah, looks like it, but just deciding whether Ino would be better at this stage.
Yeah, the hand wasn't the prettiest, I think, but...
Got the Dark Patch to accelerate energy, so Ino could have been an option there, but recognizing that the acceleration from that Professor Sada's Vitality and the draw might be better here.
You're drawing 3 cards as well anyway, and if you're generally holding the cards that you don't want, more of the cards are left in the deck for you to draw into. So just trying to eye up the best options here.
Needs an Earthen Vessel, really, at this stage.
There's the little basic Roaring Moon. There it is.
Very good.
Big pickup, and the trekking shoes as well. Decides to use it immediately, has to hold that Prime Catcher. We know how vital that is.
I don't think you'll ever see a Prime Catcher be discarded off of a trekking shoes. That was an insta-grab.
Yeah, thankfully we have yet to see a flower selecting of a Prime Catcher and a Chorus Experiment, because that'd be one of the tougher options. But so far, so good from Luke's side of the board, hitting the pieces he needs. Always remember, he's bursting through of all these item cards. Pokestop supporting that bursting through. As we see there's concealed cards finally. He's already seen plenty, it feels like. Can now sort of target down whatever he'd like.
Tina now, I think.
Yeah, Dark Patch available, right? There it is, Calamity Storm with the discard of the Pokestop. Prime Catcher in hand. Is this the option he goes down? Yes, it is. Big knockout potential here.
Giratina V survived last game, but on this occasion, the stadium was found, and Luke Kirkham will get an early 2-prize knockout using that Calamity Storm, discarding the stadium, And Rahul now left with only the single prizes on the table. Going to struggle to get a big knockout here on that Roaring Moon EX, and it will just survive now for many a turn.
It has to try and maybe utilize something like that Iron Leaves as an attacker, maybe again. It's one of those troubles with having, well, with just Giratina V-Star as a deck. Often when you're faced up against turbo builds, maybe like in the format just gone, we had Mew, which was easy to sort of take a knockout on a Giratina V. That's why you had to always bench 2, just to have that contingency plan if one does get knocked out.
Yeah, in this format, with it being a bit slower, I think the decks are built more around building the lost zone count up and motoring through the deck. And if you don't come across a Giratina V naturally, it can be quite hard, as Nest Ball is your only out.
There's the Burnett that goes. That could have helped to ramp up the lost zone very quickly. We've mentioned it a little bit before, but it's a pretty cool card that's just been covered up by that Super Rod. But a fantastic little ability just to grab any supporter out of the discard pile, maybe being able to reuse Boss's Orders in other matchups, or even this one if the opportunity presents itself, Puppet Offering, where you can just pitch it into the lost zone and select a supporter card from your discard pile to put back into your hand.
The problem you've got with Iron Leaves is it has to come from your hand, so you can't use a Nest Ball to get it out the deck. There is a singular Ultra Ball. You've also got the Forest Seal Stone, which can be utilized. And outside of that, you have to draw naturally into that Iron Leaf. So it's great to find that knockout at some point against a Charizard. But in this matchup where you've not got as much time to establish the board state, it can be quite tricky to find that Iron Leaves naturally through the deck. But it is in hand, ready to go. So it could be a big card right now.
Remember, Rahul only has access to 2 Mirage Gates, sorry, because 2 were prized at the bottom of those prizes. So could pick them up if a knockout is taken here. But right now, not enough grass energy on the board.
Not an energy in hand even to attach.
Yeah, to allow a Prism Edge attack and take out the Roaring Moon EX in the active spot. So Rahul in a really sticky situation.
Yeah, the lost zone count is high enough for the Mirage Gates we saw last turn, but it is just going to have to be a pass there. And the Boss's Orders, no way.
What a top deck. And the Pokestop already in hand. Massive here for Luke. But, of course, has to continue building that board state first. Wants to make sure he doesn't make any mistakes here. Trekking Shoes to continue plowing through that deck. What was that card, Luke? It's got to be important if you're deciding whether it's worth to keep or not.
Trekking Shoes creates tough situations. Do you want to get rid of a stadium? No, keep it.
That's your ramping of damage for your Roaring Moon EX. There it is, placed down. Kind of giving a little tail to Rahul, saying, I just hit it off my Trekking Shoes, by the way. But throws away the Boss's Orders.
Oh, wow. So the Boss's Orders going to the discard pile off of the Pokestop there, and the early Pal Pad discard. Prime Catcher has been used, so this will be the final opportunity. But at that point, the only attackers you're worried about are the ones that are going to be left in the active after knocking out your Roaring Moon. So for Luke at this stage, not only is he going to get rid of the Giratina V, he's going to get rid of the energy, going to take 2 prize cards, and will hopefully now try and set up the rest of the board for future attacks.
That's so key for Luke right now. Even just to be able to swing into those single prizes with his own Roaring Moon single prize as well. But he's prioritizing another Roaring Moon EX. Here we go. Some more energies being attached. Already having 2 on it from the hand attachment and the dark patch. Access to so many cards that allow you to burst energy back onto the board. Boss's Orders already discarded from that Pokestop, but doesn't matter, has another one. And that Pokestop will allow him to Calamity Storm for further 2 prizes in this round 13.
These knockouts are just holding Rahul back, not able to easily return. And at this stage, there's so much time for Luke, as Rahul has yet to take a prize card. And with just the 2 prize cards remaining for Luke, I do imagine we'll see a single prize board state here for Rahul, trying to just gain some traction in the matchup. But it just gives more time to Luke, and that's the concern now. The more time you give him, the more availability to setting up a stable board state there is.
Yeah, this is probably the biggest unfortunate scenario here. Just want to double check maybe the number of ancient cards. Also, just what other resources have been played by Luke as well, because, you know, he's going to start ramping up damage with those single prizes if necessary. Rahul probably needs to combo a Sableye. There we go, speak of the devil. With a Gusting Effect, Counter Catcher, Prime Catcher.
There it is. Speaking of the devil.
And then
They just keep coming through. They just keep coming through.
It's just happening. I love that I'm just telepathing this. This is great.
I mean, all the options are coming through.
Hang on, just double checking. You've only got 9 there, Rahul. One more first. Just double checking. Has to just get one more flower selecting off here. Horse's experiment and the Buddy Buddy Poffin.
Yeah, you don't need that anymore. You've got enough flower selectors in play.
Is that Roxanne available to you right now? There it is, just the second to left card in that hand. He's got the 10. Does need to find a switch out with 2 also already in the prizes from the switch, the 2 switches and 2 Mirage Gates. It's quite a tall order here for Rahul. Especially if he's super rodding some cards that won't allow him to as well.
Yeah, we saw the 2 Mirage Gate in the switches and went, well, there's plenty of them in the deck and they'll get drawn as the game goes on. We didn't expect them needed at this stage without a single prize card taken. So it could be vital, especially after the Roxanne. If you don't draw into them, what then?
The attachment has to go down first, I'm sure. The only biggest thing is he's only got 1 bench space remaining. He chooses to Roxanne. Has to hit that 1 last copy of Mirage Gate as an option to retreat the active Pokemon. Or maybe one of those switch card effects that remains in the deck. And there's not many.
This is really tough here, but maybe the Roxanne will get some turns.
Yeah, there's definitely the chance here. He's done everything he needs to so far. He's got a 10 in the lost zone. Just needs to apply pressure of his own. Ask questions of Luke. There's a Psychic Energy. Ooh. He doesn't look too great right now. Not the best Roxanne.
Just going to have to hope for some turns here. Can you gain some turns back? But everything is so big on Luke's side of the board that, you know, that Sableye might not even be enough to take those knockouts.
Free cards for Luke to work with. Ultra Ball, Dark Patch. Is that double Ultra Ball?
Yeah, it's double Ultra Ball. I mean, this is where if you had the Mew EX in play, you'd be laughing.
That's always a bit of the worry. I mean, he's having to rely on something like that Radiant Greninja as its main sort of draw engine, sort of mid to late game now. So this Roxanne could stick, especially with that Ultra Ball being played. Won't have any cards in hand, but just wants to put anything into hand for the moment, just to thin out that deck a little bit. Deck's thin enough. Just apply, even getting an energy at some point will apply pressure just by attaching it to the active.
Just increase the top deck. Now, at this stage, you've got some time. You can draw a few cards consecutively and hope that it finds you the way. But for Rahul, that was the time needed to be able to get that 2-turn attachment and build up the Sableye damage.
Remember that Burnett was already lost zone, so doesn't have an out to maybe recover that Roxanne as an option to maybe play it once again, force Luke into another awkward scenario. Do see the Nest Ball here for that Giratina V. Maybe this one will survive a little bit longer compared to the others. Flower selecting. Is that energy and a V-Star? Has V-Star in hand, I believe.
And discarding that Dark Patch as well. You got powered up attackers on the bench, but if the Roaring Moon EX with 3 energy on is knocked out at some point, that would lead to no energy, well, not enough energy in play to take
top deck mode,
next knockout. Oh, I know.
I mean, it's something. He's going to see 2 more cards into his deck.
Ooh, set up for next turn, maybe.
Pokestop as well. Could keep bursting through.
Switch card.
Hello. What more could you ask for? That's enough. Just to keep swinging away. Remember, Pokestop discards the top 3 cards of your deck. If there's any items there, put them back into your hand is the interaction. And there is the knockout and that Sableye. Further prize taken. Rahul's back is up against the wall now.
I mean, that Roxanne was the only disruption card available. So that means everything that you see in Luke's hand will remain there. So that's with the Burnett not available. Oh, the Burnett could come down.
That's what I said, but unfortunately it's been lost zoned.
That's the only way to reset that Roxanne, which is a clever way to create the space for some of those supporters, which you only play one of. But now that Burnett gone early on in the lost zone means that Roxanne was the only disruption possible for Luke. And so with the Professor Sada's Vitality in hand, there is not a huge amount Rahul can do to deny the next attack.
Yeah, it's not for Rahul to know. He has to play out this with every little bit of an out possible, double-checking all of those ancient cards. Both Pokemon, both Roaring Moons, are primed and ready. We just need one energy attachment each. Whatever Rahul sends up could be knocked out if Luke has an energy card. Luke now knows his hand is not disrupted.
So the counter catcher here could be huge. I mean, there is the Roaring Moon that was in the active has still got no energy on it, so that could be a vital piece to put into the active and disrupt.
Tough spot here. Will Burnett EX be able to do enough? Seems very unlikely, but does hold it.
Could maybe even be used to deny the switch cart as an option.
Everything has one retreat cost.
The Roaring Moon has two.
Right, that's true. It's one way, but then just by using Professor Sarda's Vitality and then an energy attachment, if there's any left in the deck or hand.
Energy switch as well, I think, in deck.
Well, it could be stopped by Burnett, right? but how long can you really do that for? That's the real question.
Back-to-back Professor Sarda's Vitality would be, in theory, enough.
It's
just a pass. Oh, and that's a switch card there.
Oh, that's it. Big top deck again for Luke Kirkham.
And that's going to be it. Luke Kirkham taking his 10th win here at EUIC in round 13. What a deck he's brought here. The aggression of Roaring Moon EX working so well early on. And unfortunately for Rahul, just not able to keep up with the pace of his opponent, and now putting himself in a prime position to get a few more wins and take himself into that top 8.
I can't imagine there being many other big Roaring Moon EX main attacker decks that was part of the field from across this weekend. And it's great to see Luke bring a little bit more innovation to what was essentially Turbo Roaring Moon from the last formats into this rotation, and still showcasing just why it's such a strong ancient Pokemon EX card.
I've always loved the way Luke just recognizes powering cards that don't get enough attention, and you can see exactly why. And this deck just motors through its resources and finds all of those great cards to power up the Roaring Moon, whether it be the cards to search for them or whether it be the cards to power them up. And having that single prize Roaring Moon as an option has increased the damage output of the single prize option with the Roaring Moon EX. And you can see exactly why it was scary throughout that game.
So they've got a lot of time for both of these players. Rahul, we've seen numerous times across EU broadcasts and, of course, across the pond as well. Just a fantastic player. Just unfortunately falling a little bit short, never really able to get the Giratina V-Star going and just surviving long enough against the Roaring Moon EX. Both of these Pokemon, of course, having that fantastic attack to just instant KO any other Pokemon in the format.
Locking out the Giratina V-Star from ever attacking. Whenever it got onto the bench, it was targeted down, whether it be the Prime Catcher or the boss's orders. And I think we've got to give a bit of credit to Prime Catcher being so key for Luke in those turns. Not only was it a great way to take the knockout, but it's a great way to switch the active out of the way, as 3 switch cart and those Prime Catcher looking to move the active quite frequently here, Luke.
Yeah, Luke's unwavering faith in his deck building ability, deck choice, often actually doesn't always often pay off, but this one has been so far, Luke, so kudos to you.
And holding those switch carts right down to the very end, knowing that the only way his deck was ever going to struggle was by having something locked up in the active spot. So Luke Kirkham going forward with those 10 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw. Great spot to be in.
31 points, yeah.
A lot of great players up there. Going to have to take them down. And you do wonder how the matchup spread is into the top decks in the format. It seems to be doing well so far.
Yeah, can't be